All right, looks like we're going live here. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to MLM Monday. We have a special session for you today, all about principles for fantastic field communication. We get asked about this all the time because folks seem to really have challenges at time in the direct sales industry with field communication. And I have a special guest I brought on today that I'm really excited to introduce you to. She got her start at Avon and then was doing logistics at Longaberger Baskets, then continued on at Arbonne as VP of Customer Service, and later was with Sirius, that was Sylvester Stallone's direct sales company, as Vice President. And so I'm really looking forward to introducing you to Kathy Huffman from Ohio, and I want to welcome her here to the call today. Kathy, are you on the line with us?
I am here, Ben. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. I'm excited about this, so I will follow your lead. What do you need to know?
This is awesome, Kathy. I'm just happy that you're here because we get this question a lot when people maybe haven't had a history in the direct sales space and they've started a network marketing company or a party plan company or MLM, and maybe they're a manufacturer in the space and they're staffing out their team and they're wondering, how much email is too much, all these different things. How should I communicate with the field? And there's a lot of I think key takeaways that you learn over time, especially with a career like yours, of things you do and things you don't do. And so a lot of the questions we prepared today are here to kind of help people understand that. And even if they've had an MLM for a long time, I think there's going to be something you can learn today. So the first question I wanted to ask is, who's at stake, right? Is it the distributor, corporate, the brand? Who's at stake when it comes to field communication? What are we risking by not taking this seriously?
Well, it's funny when you ask that question, Ben, because my answer is yes. Very simply, everybody's at stake. And let me just, before I jump into that, I just want to say a couple of things. I started my career with Avon Products. You already mentioned that. It was a great place to learn a little bit about direct sales and to grow up, actually, in the industry. And I was with Avon, for almost 17 years. And I have flashbacks all the time, too. And I was walking down these huge hallways of the world's greatest beauty company. And I said to myself, what in the world am I doing here? Because I had just graduated from college with a degree in sociology. And my thought process was that I was going to be saving starving children. And instead, I'm walking down these hallways talking about how we're going to ship lipsticks to Avon representatives all around the country. And so I had this breakthrough moment here where I said to myself, that degree in sociology was absolutely perfect. Because, and I have to digress for a second here. I wanted to, it's been a long time. So I looked up the definition of sociology just to reinforce for myself why it's so important. According to Google, and of course, we know that everything that Google says is true, right?
Absolutely.
Sociology is the study of the development, structure, and functioning of human society. So I said, okay, that's not a very sexy definition, but that tells you what it is. Let me check and see what Webster says. Webster says that sociology is the science of society, social institutions, and social relationships. Specifically, the systematic study of the development, structure, interaction, and collective behavior of organized groups of human beings. So then I said to myself, okay, that's good too, but I sum it up this way. My education was figuring out what makes people tick. So there you go. Walking down the halls of Avon Products, my experience in actually putting to practice what I studied in school just came full, it was in my face. It is all about the people and the organizational dynamics. And what's the most important part of that process? Communications.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to remember it's a human business, right? At the end of the day, we work on products, we work on systems, we work on everything else. And you'll hear people say it's a relationship business. It's a relationship business. But if you say it's a human business and you hear that, it's communication, right? That's what a relationship is what is it feel like in a relationship. If I ask you how you feel in your relationship with your spouse, you'd probably talk about some sort of communication you had together. You probably wouldn't say, well, his job, right? You wouldn't reference anything else. It's what we talk about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're so right. It's all about who is your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that you're communicating with? And I don't want to make this too much of a repeat of what everybody already knows. Mm-hmm. But you titled this Fantastic Field Communications. And I want you to know, one of my own personal views of the world is that F words are fabulous. Mm-hmm. Fantastic, fabulous, friends, family, faith. There are certain things that companies and people adopt as part of their own personal brand of communications, mm-hmm. and how they present themselves. And I think you always have to keep those things in mind, especially when you're dealing with the field, because you are dealing with a huge, audience of independent distributors who are all their individual persons. They all have their own style. They all have their own way of communicating. And they also all have their own way of receiving information and processing it. So from my perspective, when you ask who's at stake, everybody's at stake.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important that you focus on the message. The message is key. And my personal objective is I want you to remember this conversation with me when we're done today. Mm-hmm. And what's going to make you remember it? I think about this all the time. I've got to give you a simple message that when you go, oh, what was it she said about this? My view of what makes up fantastic field communications is, number one, it's got to be timely. Whatever your message, it has to be timely. Think about, our little fairy tales that we heard as mm-hmm. children. It's got to be not too hot, not too cold, but just right. The timeliness of the message is important. You have to give that a tremendous amount of thought. Secondly, it has to be relevant. This has to be something that's important. It's got to be something that's meaningful. It's got to be something that people want to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be.
Now, that one moment on the relevant one, this is really important because I see this a lot.
Yes.
How many times have you seen a client, with other companies, I know you've done some consulting, or even myself, I've seen it where there may be something that's an announcement that should only go to maybe 2% of the members, and yet they email it out to the entire field, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe there's special, hey, 1 second, why didn't you just have customer service reach out to those 2% of the people and give them the information, instead of filling up everyone else's email inbox with something that wasn't relevant to them? You see some clients sending out 4 or 5 emails a day to their field. Hey, are those all relevant to the audience as a whole? Or do you need to kind of channel your communication to be more relevant? Mm-hmm. Great point. Right. Yeah.
And you jumped a little bit ahead of me, because I'm going to come back to in response to the next question that I think you're going to have for me. But next to relevance is your message has to be understood. You have to you have to be careful that you're providing and this is a simple basic, everybody knows this: who, what, when, where, why, and how. That is so important that you think about that, and that the message you're communicating addresses each one of those elements, because that's what's going to allow you to be certain that your message has been understood. Next, you've got it's got to be absolutely sincere. Your message has to be delivered from the heart, with sincerity. People have to believe that what you're telling them is real, it's important. Yep. And that comes from you. That comes from the person who's delivering the message. It has to come across in that way. And then lastly, but this all ties together, it's got to be truthful. you've got to have the facts. You've got to have your information correct, and you've got to make sure that you're delivering that information to the best of your knowledge and ability in a truthful fashion. And if you think about those things, timely, relevant, understood, sincere, and truthful, guess what it spells? That's trust. Building trust in the field is the single most important thing that can be the result of your field communications. Because remember, you're dealing with people all over the globe potentially. Yeah. They got to trust you. So that message has to incorporate every single one of those things. And as I think about it, I put that together because when we get off this call today and this presentation, I want you to remember, if you don't remember anything else, just remember trust.
Trust.
Timely.
Love it.
Relevant, understood, sincere, and truthful.
You know, this is great because we actually use that word all the time with clients. I don't use the acronym. I will now that I know it, but I use the word trust all the time because I say, hey, the way you said that, it's going to break trust with people. I say all the time, hey, if you frame it that way, you run the risk of breaking trust with some of your members. And so what are some of the things you've seen that have been pitfalls? Like if you were to say, hey, these are the top 3 pitfalls I see people make all the time, things that break trust that they do in field communication.
The first thing is not doing what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. When you communicate, and I don't care whether this is to the field, to your internal corporate staff, to your employees out in the distribution center who are taking care to make sure that every single order is processed and shipped in a timely fashion, you have to absolutely make sure that when you tell them you're going to do something, you do it. And none of us are perfect. Sometimes stuff gets in the way and we're not able to do what we said we were going to do. So circle back. Here it is. It's time to communicate. What is the message that needs to be communicated? Is it timely? If this is an issue that happened 3 weeks ago, forget it. You missed your opportunity to communicate. If it's something that it may happen in the future, think about what's the right time to get that message out there. So the first pitfall is not doing what you say you're going to do. And then more importantly, not communicating it in the right time, in the right way, to the right people.
I see that all the time. Before I interrupt because I gotta pause, and people have to hear that. You know what? The only human being that never communicates is a dead one, right? You gotta remember that. A corpse. They're a corpse, right? The only human being on the planet that doesn't communicate ever is a dead one. They're a corpse. You can be the most introverted, silent person. You still communicate when you want food. You want some water. You go and you order a meal, right? You go to the grocery store and you say, "Here, take my credit card," right? We all communicate no matter who we are, unless we're dead. And a business that doesn't communicate with their members ever, right? You're not top mind. You're not a part of their daily experience, and you're on your way to being dead because you look like you're dead, right?
There you go. Wow. Man. Okay. Man. That's a very great picture.
You got to think about it. Don't be a corpse, right? That's a pitfall, right?
Absolutely. I think the next thing is, and you hit on this earlier, and I'm circling back to that, is the next big pitfall of major or any company is, especially in the direct selling space and network marketing, is not having a clear communications platform in terms of the organizational development. Remember why organizations developed levels? You've got the CEO, and then you got the C-level people, and then you got the VPs and all those things. All of that came to be to facilitate communications. You have to have a hierarchy in place that is used to get the right messages to the right people at the right time. You have to use your field leadership team. You have to invest in developing their leadership and gaining their trust because they're the most important communications vehicle that you have. So you have to identify, and too often, to your point, messages just go out via email or on Facebook or Twitter, wherever the case may be, without giving your field leadership team the respect and the trust that they can help you get the message out in the right way. So that's the second thing that sticks out in my mind that I've seen happen way too many times. That has to be a priority for every direct selling company. Think about how to use the leaders in your field sales organization. Thirdly, again, and this gets off, I don't want to go off in too many different directions, but it does come back to, again, focusing, and this is off this topic, and so I won't get into a lot of discussion about it, but it really is organizational development. It is, how are you training people? How are you building people? How are you putting people in the right places? What tools are you giving them so that they can be successful?
Yeah, do they know how to communicate? That's right on target. Like, do your field leaders know what type of communication is acceptable? That comes back to your compliance guidelines and your culture of who you are. And you're right on, Kathy. Not only is it you having a clear communication plan so people know, hey, email is where the communication gets out, and every email will also be on the Facebook fan page. So they're in both places. They have a set plan of knowing, okay, I won't miss anything if I watch those two places, right? But telling your leaders, hey, this is how we share this, and this is how what we don't say, right? Hey, because the field can be feedback, right? They might see stuff that we don't see fast. Can help us out. Yeah.
Exactly. And there has to be, again, that's part of the organizational development side of this whole subject. And that, organizational development is important in any company. But when you're running an army of independent brand ambassadors who are out there, it is more important than ever that they be given the training and the development to become the leaders that they have the innate ability to do. They just need somebody to take them and show them the way. So as a company, you have to model the right kind of communications. When you communicate in the right way, your field organization, just by virtue of exposing them to it, will absorb, and that's part of the learning process. That doesn't take the place of providing leadership training and development, and that has to take place. There's so many different ways to do it now. You have to use all of them. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ken.
This is perfect because you're going right to where we need to go in our session today for everyone who's watching. This is just so perfect. So like as Kathy finished the show today, we want to move to 3 principles that we need to keep in mind for powerful field communication. So we've learned trust. We've learned not to do, don't not keep your word with doing what you say you're going to do. Don't just go silent like a corpse. Don't not have a clear communication plan. But how do we actually, you just touched on training. What are 3 things we can do to make sure that we do have good field communication? What are 3 things we should be doing, knowing what we know now to avoid those pitfalls? So you touched on training. Let's flush out those 3 for where we are.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing takes the place of training. And that's what's made the direct selling industry great, because companies like Avon Products, who is one of the front runners, Avon's been around for 130 years. Now they may have some things that they're having to do to adjust nowadays and
to be relevant, right? That's what it is at the end of the day, right? 130 years, the world was a bit of a different place, and here we are, 2017. You're seeing relevancy. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is again one of those areas where, from a communications perspective, and a company like Avon, and I can speak to this from my own personal experience, Avon invested heavily in training in the field, training inside, because you have to provide common ground for the field and your corporate staff. They have to be communicating in the same way.
Yes.
They have to have the same access to training, maybe tweaked a little bit based on which area of the organization, but it all comes down to how you're developing your people to carry out the mission of the company. And so, yeah, you cannot, and that, unfortunately, that's one of the things that companies kind of, when they look at their budget, they go, oh, we need to down the training part a little bit. And that's always a bad decision. There's plenty of ways to save money in other areas.
It so is. And with today in technology, I have clients who are, if you're a brand new startup company, you're doing this whole thing on a budget, there's 4K cameras in your iPhone, for goodness sake. I have people buying a $20 tripod and sticking this in their office and shooting some starter training videos in a couple hours on an afternoon in their office. And what's so important about the training, though, more than the cost or anything else of actually doing it, is it sets proper expectations, right? If you want people to do something, let them know how it should be done. Don't assume that, that the field is going to do it properly for you out there in the space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, and that's a really good point, Ben, which I hadn't really even thought about, but in order for you, from a corporate standpoint, you want to trust the field. You want them to trust you. Your communication is a critical element in developing that two-way trust. However, it's not fair to expect the field to be trusted when you haven't taught them what you need them to be doing. So you have to invest in it in order to again, that's part of building trust.
I have a great analogy that I think has helped some of the clients and others, and it's like when you teach your children how to date, right? We have to understand that this is a good one for all of us, right? I only have a 16-month-old, so I'm not too qualified for this. I know, Kathy, you have older children, but we think about our children, and I teach them how to do everything. I have all sorts of disciplining my child on how to sleep by herself in her crib without needing a mom or dad to put her to bed. So we all have these, but I like this analogy of teaching your child how to date is, if you're frustrated with your child's dating practices, right? Well, what did you teach them to do? What did you model for them? What did you say explicitly and implicitly about what a dating relationship should look like? It's the exact same way as corporate and the field. Some companies go too far and they think their distributors are the 3-year-old. They are not the helpless 3-year-old that you need to do everything for. I need you to think about your distributors like the 21-year-old that's finishing college and is about to leave your home forever, right? And you're setting them on their own path. They're independent, and you've set them up the best way you know how for success in the marketplace and in the world, right? And so take the info Kathy's given you today, folks, and set your distributors up for success that way. We only have about 2 minutes left for our session today. This has been awesome information. I'm really grateful that Kathy took some time to come out and share this stuff. Not many people get a moment to be in the mind of someone who's been with Avon for 17 years or who ran customer service over at Arbonne. I mean, there's just a wealth of real life stuff that Kathy's speaking from today, everybody. This isn't ideas she got while sipping a mocha latte on her porch. This is stuff she got hammering away with the team, getting through pieces to get to that next level of growth. And so for the people who are here on the line watching us today, what are some final thoughts you'd like to share with them, Kathy, as we wrap up the show?
Well, and thank you for asking me that, Ben. I think that the bottom line to it is you always have to keep in mind what's important. You asked me what are the 3 principles that we should focus on. Number one, we have to remember, whether it's our field organization or our internal organization and the employees that make it all happen, we have to remember that this is about their livelihood. This is, whether you're an employee or an independent distributor or a shareholder, this is your livelihood. That's important. Never underestimate that. Secondly, you've got to remember, everybody's reputation is at stake here. Everybody who's out there in the field carrying forward the message and representing the brand is putting their reputation on the line. That's important. And that's why the message and how it's communicated using trust makes all the difference in the world and does make a huge difference in terms of the success of the organization. So Ben, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I can't believe 20 minutes has passed already, but I get it.
You're awesome. Well, Kathy, thank you for being on the call as well. And for everyone who was checking out today, trust, write it down, timely, relevant, understood, sincere, and truth. Keep those principles in place as you're communicating so you got a winning strategy for fantastic field communication. Thank you so much for being online today, Kathy. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Ben. Talk to you soon.
All right, I'll see you soon. God bless.